Former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher of Great Britain dead at the age of 87, having died from a stroke this morning. And obviously, this is having a ripple effect across the world as many nations remember a woman from 2.5 decades ago who spoke volumes not only to conservative leadership, but also women in politics. Frank Donatelli is in Washington. He's a former top aide to President Reagan and now recruits office seekers for the GOP. Frank, thanks for being with us. You were one of the first people we thought of, having spent such intimate time with President Reagan at a time when there was this de facto marriage between Reagan and Thatcher. I wanted you to perhaps give us some of the better anecdotes that you remember from that time together and how he viewed her as a person as their relationship developed.
Right, Ashley. Well, there are so many things that I could say, but I might just point out two general areas for you. The first is that Reagan always saw Thatcher's election in Britain in 1979 as the model for his election in 1980. The same economic forces of decline that were at work in Britain in the 1970s also, according to Reagan, existed in America. And so when Thatcher came to power, Reagan saw that as a very, very good ideological sign that he would be elected in 1980. And he talked about this many times during the campaign. The second thing would be...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the second thing would be when they both were in office, Reagan saw Margaret Thatcher as his essential partner for his plans to try to end the Cold War on terms favorable to America. Time after time, Ashley, she ran important interference for him to keep the alliance together, to keep the West united. So the Cold War ended on terms that we all now know were very, very good for the West.
And that's partially an answer to my next question, which was, clearly it makes sense that he would look to her as a model for election in 1980. But what about his effect on her?
Well, they had a very good personal relationship. And, personal relationships like that, both partners or both individuals learn from each other. They didn't always agree on things, but on the big things, they almost always work together. I can remember one thing I can tell you very, very late in the Reagan administration. There was a G7 or whatever it was, G8 meeting in Washington, and I just happened to be going on the trip the next day with the president for a political trip. And I said to him, well, sir, how did the meetings go last night? And I'll spare you my impression of Reagan, but he looked and he said, well, he said it was pretty contentious, but thank goodness for Margaret. She kept us all on the same page. I think he very much saw her in that way.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall on any of those meetings, and particularly her own cabinet meetings, which we want to dig into a little bit later. Frank, thanks so much for being with us. Do appreciate your personal anecdotes on this time.
Thanks very much.